This is not a work of fiction designed to entertain. It is the cold, hard transcript of the day my soul died and the weeks I spent making sure everyone else paid for the funeral. I stood in the middle of a luxury penthouse on the 42nd floor of the Sinclair in Chicago holding a set of keys I was never supposed to find, staring at a pair of red silk heels that I had never bought for my wife. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. My name is David, and for 12 years I believed I was the luckiest man in Illinois. I was a senior forensic accountant, a man who dealt in numbers, logic, and cold, hard facts. My wife Alina was a high-powered litigator at one of the circle firms on Wacker Drive. We were the power couple of our suburban Oak Park neighborhood. We had the Victorian house with the wraparound porch, the black SUV, and the annual trips to the Amalfi Coast. I worshipped the ground she walked on, often working 80-hour weeks just to ensure she could have the life of luxury she'd grown accustomed to. I thought our silence at dinner was just the exhaustion of two successful people. I thought her late nights at the office were the price of her making partner. I was a fool who traded his intuition for a comfortable lie. The crack in the porcelain appeared on a Tuesday. Alina had left for a deposition in Springfield that was supposed to last 3 days. While looking for my spare car keys in the junk drawer, I found a small magnetic key box tucked behind a stack of old menus. Inside was a gold fob and a handwritten note with an address, 1201. En La Salle Saint. It's a prestigious address in the Gold Coast. We didn't own property there. At least I didn't. I drove into the city, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as I navigated the congested traffic of the Kennedy Expressway. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a surprise for my upcoming 40th birthday. Maybe it was a corporate apartment for her firm. But as I pulled into the parking garage and the sensor recognized the fob, a pit formed in my stomach that felt like swallowed lead. I took the elevator up, the silence of the luxury high-rise echoing the pounding of my heart. When the doors opened to the 42nd floor, I walked to Unit 4B. The key turned with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the hallway. The apartment was stunning. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, bathed in the orange glow of the setting sun. But it wasn't the view that broke me. It was the scent. The air was thick with the smell of Le Labo Santel 33 Lena S signature perfume, mixed with the heavy, musky scent of a men's cologne I didn't recognize. I walked into the bedroom, my boots sinking into the plush white carpet. There, draped over a designer chair, was a black lace teddy she had told me she lost a year ago. On the nightstand sat a framed photo. It wasn't of us. It was Alina laughing, her head thrown back in a way she hadn't laughed with me in years. Draped over the shoulder of a man I recognized instantly, Julian Vane, the managing partner of her firm. A man who had sat at my dinner table. A man who had toasted to our 10th anniversary. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I sat on the edge of the bed they shared and felt the world turn gray. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was financial, emotional, and systemic. I looked through the desk in the corner and found the documents. She hadn't just been cheating. She had been funneling money from our joint brokerage account into a shell corporation to pay for this love nest. She was preparing to leave me, but not before she bled me dry. I left the apartment before they returned. I sat in my car in a dark corner of the parking garage and watched them pull in an hour later in Julian's silver Porsche. They were all over each other, their laughter echoing through the concrete structure. Lena looked younger, vibrant, and utterly devoid of the stress she claimed was killing our marriage. I watched them disappear into the elevator, and in that moment, the David who loved her died. The forensic accountant took over. For the next 3 weeks, I became a ghost in my own home. I played the part of the doting husband, kissing her forehead when she returned from Springfield, listening to her lies about how much she missed me. It was nauseating. Every time she touched me, I felt a physical urge to recoil, but I channeled that disgust into my work. I didn't go to a divorce lawyer first. I went to a private investigator, a former cop named Elias, who specialized in high-asset infidelity. I want everything, I told him, sliding a retainer across the table in a dim diner on Clark Street. Every text, every hotel receipt, every cent they've moved. I don't want a divorce. I want an execution, Elias delivered. Within 10 days, I had a digital folder that was a roadmap of their depravity. They hadn't just been having an affair. They were using the firm's resources to fund their lifestyle. They were overbilling clients and kickbacking the excess into the shell company Alina had set up. They thought they were untouchable. Julian was a titan of the Chicago legal scene, and Alina was his rising star. They felt they were above the laws of morality and the laws of the state. Alina's arrogance was her downfall. She began to treat me with a cold, calculated disdain, as if I were a nuisance she was waiting to discard. One night, as she dressed for another gala with Julian, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "David, you've become so dull. Maybe you should take a hobby. You're starting to fade into the furniture." I smiled at her, a thin, sharp expression she didn't recognize. "You're right, Alina. I've been looking into some new investments. I think things are about to get very interesting." She laughed, a sharp, mocking sound, and walked out the door. She didn't realize that I had already spent the afternoon meeting with the board of ethics and the senior partners at her firm who were in Julian's pocket. I had spent the week meticulously untangling the web of her embezzlement. I didn't just have proof of her cheating, I had proof of her crimes. The end began on a Friday. Julian's firm was hosting its annual Justice for All charity ball at the Art Institute of Chicago. It was the social event of the season. Alina wore a dress that cost more than my first car, a shimmering silver gown that made her look like a goddess. She didn't even want me to go, suggesting I stay home because I looked tired. I insisted. I told her I wanted to see her shine. The ballroom was filled with the elite of Chicago judges, politicians, and the city's wealthiest donors. Julian stood on the stage, the epitome of smug power, preparing to give his keynote speech. Alina stood at the foot of the stage, looking up at him with an adoration she had never once given me. I stood at the back of the room, next to a man in a dark suit from the Illinois Attorney General's office. As Julian began his speech about integrity and the sanctity of the law, the large projection screens behind him, meant to show a montage of the firm's charitable work, flickered. But it wasn't the charity video that played, it was the footage from the secret apartment. High-definition video of Julian and Alina discussing how they were milking the Miller estate to pay for their European summer. Then came the audio crisp. Clear recordings of Alina mocking me, calling me a useful idiot who provided the perfect cover for her real life. The room went silent, a heavy, suffocating blanket of shock falling over the audience. Julian froze, his face turning a ghostly shade of white as his own voice echoed through the hall, detailing how he had bypassed the firm's auditing system. I walked through the crowd, the sea of people partying for me as if I were a specter. I reached the front where Alina stood, her mouth agape, her eyes darting around the room in a panic. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, she really saw me. She saw the man she had underestimated. "The dull husband found a hobby, Alina," I said quietly, my voice carrying in the dead silence. "I'm an accountant. Do you really think you could hide the numbers from me?" The federal agents moved in then. It wasn't a scene from a movie. It was cold and efficient. Julian was handcuffed on stage, his prestige evaporating in the glow of the projection screen. Alina was led out of the ballroom in her silver gown, the flashes of a dozen cell phone cameras capturing her fall from grace. She tried to scream, to lash out. But the weight of the evidence I had provided to the authorities was an anchor she could unswim against. In the weeks that followed, the destruction was total. Because the money she used for the penthouse and her lifestyle was stolen from both our joint accounts and her firm's clients, the innocent spouse laws didn't protect her. I filed for divorce the next morning. My lawyer was a shark who made Alina's previous colleagues look like goldfish. I didn't just get the house and the assets. I got a judgment that ensured she would be paying me back for the rest of her natural life. Julian's career was over. He was disbarred within a month and faced 15 years in federal prison for embezzlement and racketeering. Alina, stripped of her license to practice law, found that the friends she had in the city disappeared the moment she became a liability. The social circles she had climbed so desperately to join slammed their doors in her face. I remember the last time I saw her. It was in a bleak, fluorescent-lit hallway of the Daily Center. She looked haggard, her designer clothes replaced by a cheap suit she must have bought at a department store. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was thin and dull. She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and begging. "You destroyed me, David," she hissed, her voice trembling. You took everything. Was it worth it? Are you happy now, sitting in that big house all alone? I looked at her, and I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no love, no regret. Just the cold satisfaction of a balanced ledger. I'm not alone, Alina, I replied, adjusted my coat. I have my integrity. You have a court date. I walked away, the sound of my footsteps steady on the marble floor. I sold the house in Oak Park. It held too many ghosts of the man I used to be. I moved to a quiet place in the Pacific Northwest, where the air is cold and the people are honest. Sometimes I sit on my porch and look at the fog rolling in over the trees, and I think about that penthouse in Chicago. I think about the red heels and the silver gown. The silence of my new life isn't the silence of exhaustion anymore. It's the silence of a man who finally knows the truth. She thought she was playing a game where she held all the cards, but she forgot that I was the one who kept the score. The end.